What do you think is the relevance of the Arab Spring towards Pakistan? As you know, the divide between what the government knows and what the public knows in Pakistan is also increasing, particularly as it relates to the secret deals Pakistani government has with the United States.
I think at one level, the Arab Spring is so important for defeating and delegitimizing all what Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups stood for. Because saying we stand on our own feet, we know how to take things in our control, we want freedom, we are as human as anybody else, and we deserve a better understanding, and we deserve better leaders as well. For Pakistan, that was not a something new, because in Pakistan there's a history of political movements, democratic movements. So the Pakistanis had their own spring, so to say, in the last 2 years when they stood against Musharraf and in support of Pakistani judiciary. I think the Arab Spring, if it will have any important impact in the immediate future, it is about those religious militant groups or those extremist groups who would always say that the Arab world is either incompetent or under the thumb of the Americans, and they are not doing anything constructive. That kind of ideal and that kind of inspiring factor has been taken away. So that in fact can be helpful for the Pakistani government and for all those in Pakistan who want to fight against religious extremism, because the global networks or the global attraction of terrorist groups will diminish. That is one message. The second also is that Pakistan, in fact, can be of a huge value to some of these Arab countries. Many countries, in Egypt, the last time there was a democratically elected leader was many decades ago, maybe not in the present way, in the modern history. In some other countries as well, Pakistan, despite its failures, has had an experience with democratic governance, how the parliament is run, how an elected official will have to be involved in policy making, for instance. This is also an opportunity for Pakistan to interact more with Turkey, with Indonesia on their side, and also with the democracies of the Arab world. That in the long run will help the democracies, will help the democratic transition in Pakistan.
Pakistan is facing multifarious problems, but how do you think the tussles of the emerging powers and the established powers help understand what's taking place in Pakistan? I'm referring to the BRIC nations and security alliances such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the CSTO on one hand and NATO on the other.
Very clearly, there is a flux in the international relations and in flux in terms of these power politics, whether it is geopolitical or at an international level. But I think it's the geopolitics in the local context or regional context which is becoming much more relevant. Yes, US has huge interest in South Asia, just to give one example, but it seems to me that it will be Pakistan, India, Afghanistan and Iran which will play they are the stakeholders of course as well, but they will play the most significant role in deciding the fate of Afghanistan, let's say. Or China is also trying to expand its influence, though in a very different fashion. Because we are so used to the Cold War politics era, we are so used to the political philosophies and theories in the Western world that we read, and which produced a great learning experience for everyone. But I have a feeling that all of that is in fact changing. We are going more towards regional scenes and regional theaters and regional players playing a significant role.
If I may add, like for example, China and Russia recently are aligning their policy as it relates to Libya. And you may be aware of it, that there have been certain meetings that have taken place, and they sort of feel that NATO is using the revolutions to put its hold on Middle East.
I think that China and Russia are trying to benefit from the larger confusion, I would say, larger confusion that we see in the Western world or Europe. What had happened in Egypt, Tunisia, and in Syria surprised everyone. There was no set policy paper in place to know how to teach them how to actually react to that. There were different lobbies at play as well. There were new expectations as well. Russia and China, I think, were able to understand what is happening a bit quicker, if I may add. And what is happening actually in Libya, to me, is a consequence of a failure to understand what was really happening. It was believed at one level that we went into Afghanistan and Iraq with a different agenda or with different goal and different ambition. Now is the time to say that we will stand up against dictators. But if that policy is only relevant to Libya, and for instance, some people will say if not to Bahrain or not to Saudi Arabia, then what is the real change? The change has to be consistent. The policy has to be consistent. It has to be well thought out. It has to, I would argue, be in the context of what President Obama has very categorically mentioned in Egypt, in Turkey, and also in his recent speech about US relations with the Muslim world.
Do you think the Islamic world in general is moving away from United States? We have seen the tensions increase in the relations between Saudi Arabia and US. Iran has traditionally had bad relations because of its nuclear ambitions. And lately, the tensions between US-Pakistan relations, does it mean that US and the Islamic world are drifting apart?
I think since the coming of President Obama and the White House, things have changed. Not that before him, President Bush was at war with Islam. I don't think so. But they were not sensitive to some of the discourse and narrative taking place in the Muslim world. Since President Obama came in office, he has been very categorical in saying US is not at war with Islam. I think this is having an impact. This message is now reverberating, or this message is being listened in various parts of the Muslim world. But US also has to acknowledge and understand that its policies in Afghanistan and Iraq are seen with a very critical eye. There is a huge distrust because US has been seen as supportive of monarchies and dictatorial authoritarian regimes. That image or that perspective or that perception is not going to go away very quickly. But I think some of the policy decisions of this administration have been quite helpful in bringing the Muslim world to have a better understanding of US, and for US to understand that they cannot continue to look at different countries and different regions as different blocks. There is an element of continuity, or there is an element of connection within the Muslim world, and we should not always be worried about that. If Osama bin Laden or any terrorist group has a global network, maybe the counter to that is a more coordination, cooperation, and combination between Muslim democracies. US will be much better off to interact with and support in any way any new group formation which has Muslim democracies there, and may not think that they'll be able to direct or influence it directly, but just to have a good interaction and engagement will make a difference. I think certainly within Washington DC there are people who are thinking on these lines.
Do you think his death would make the reconciliation with different factions of Afghan Taliban easier? I'm referring to the Haqqanis, the Mullah Umars, the Quetta Shuras. Now that the head figure is gone, do you think it will speed up the process?
I think Osama bin Laden's death was very important in this sense that he had a symbolic stature, but in many ways the damage was done. I very much doubt that his policies or his organization was so strong that they were defining the various relationships. I think there's a new dynamic. There is a second-tier leadership of Taliban which is in action. There is failure of the nation-building project. We should have no reluctance in accepting that. The Pakistan-India confrontation continues. It is those factors which will define the future of Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden's removal, or elimination, or bringing to justice, whatever label we want to give, I think is a positive thing. A chapter is closed. Let's forget about it. There are new dynamics which need to be tackled.
Thank you very much.
So kind of you.